Hi guys, welcome back. And before starting the video, I want you to see the difference between these two clips. So you can clearly see the difference between the first clip and the second clip and how the second clip feels really good compared to the first one. And you might have watched a number of YouTube videos where they show you how to make a gun fire, but they don't actually show you how to make it feel good like an actual game. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make a gun fire plus how to make it feel good. Also, I will try to explain as much as possible that all the notes I'm going to use in this video. So without wasting any time, let's get straight into it. All right. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to import the actual gun mesh and the animation. So I already have it. I have this gun pack called Low Poly Animated Modern Guns. Well, I'm not allowed to give it to you guys, but I'm going to show you how to get another weapon mesh for free. So come to your Epic Game Launcher and come to the Fab and search for FPS Weapon Bundle. And then the first option you see over here called FPS Weapon Bundle, just click on it. This is completely free and just add it to your project. And that's it. Now you have a gun with the animation. So once you're done, come to your content browser again and make a folder called weapon. I already have the folder, so I'm going to name it weapon 1. Now inside the folder, we need to make a blueprint, a master blueprint for all the weapons, which I'm going to call it BP Weapon Master. So this blueprint will be the master for all the weapon class that we're going to have. Let's say for rifle or pistol, if you want to have a multiple weapons like knife, this will be the blueprint for all of them. Open it, and then on the viewport, click on add and search for skeletal mesh. We need to use the skeletal mesh. You might ask, why not a static mesh? Because we cannot play animation on a static mesh. We need to have a skeletal mesh to play the animation. Let's say you might have an animation for reload, for weapon change, for fire. So for all that, we need a skeletal mesh. Plus, we need one more thing called arrow. So this arrow will be the starting point of our gunfire, the starting point for our bullet. Once you're done, now right click on a weapon master. Today we are going to work on rifle. So create child blueprint class and name it BP rifle. Over here on the skeletal mesh, now you need to add those FPS weapon that you just imported. It might be called, let's say, rifle for you or AK-47 for you. On my assets pack, it's called AZ14W. So instead of adding it from here, I'm going to go to my content pack and I'm going to add it from here. I'm going to add this one. As you can see over here now. Plus, on your FPS pack, you just need to add one weapon mesh and it's going to work. But my pack is a bit different. Everything is separated over here, like the muzzle or the scope. So I need to add them one by one. So I will be back after adding all of them. Okay, now it's done. If you have a separate skeletal mesh like mine, so what I did was I added everything inside the skeletal mesh, and then on the socket, I've just added it on the right socket. That's it. This one on the scope, as it is a scope. This one as a magazine. So that's it. Now we have this arrow over here. So we need to point it toward the right direction. And that's it. So now come to your player character class. So now I have a FPS hand with the right animation for the gun. So it's going to work when I just add it in the hand. So if I just add a child actor, we need to add weapon as a child actor every time. So I'm going to call it weapon. And then on this child actor class, I'm going to add BP rifle. There you go. So I've added the rifle. So it's not in the right socket. So what I need to do is on the parent socket, I'm going to have to search for weapon. There we go. Now the gun is automatically on the right socket because this animation pack was made with this hand and with the weapon together. So this FPS hand and weapon comes together. That's why it's made already. I won't go deep into the sockets and animation because I assume at this point you already know how to set up animation and how to set up socket. So once you did this one, come to the weapon master, because if you have different weapon, let's say pistol, rifle, semi-auto rifle, you shouldn't code individually. That is not modular. We need to make a modular system that we can use again and again. So how to do that? Just delete everything from the event graph. And then here, make a custom event. And we will call this suit. That's it. We have this custom event called suit now. In the meantime, I want to check if this weapon is automatic or if this is a pistol. So for that, I'm going to make a Boolean call is auto. And then I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to get it. And then I'm going to add a branch. So if the weapon is automatic, we want to make it automatic. But if the weapon is not automatic, we want to make it single like a pistol. So let's do that. So first thing, what we need to do is we need to make a function called LineTraceSuit. So we need to make the weapon actually shoot, right? So for the LineTraceSuit, we are going to use a node called LineTraceByChannel. Right click and search for LineTraceByChannel. So what this node does. So this node creates a line trace from the starting point and it ends on the end point. So we are going to feed the starting and ending point. Also on the draw debug type, we're going to make it for duration and then we will make it for like 2 seconds. So the starting point will be, as I said last time, the arrow. Just get the arrow over here. And then we need the world location of this arrow. So you might ask, what is world location? So the world location is the location of this arrow right now over here in the world. So after that, simple, just add it onto the starting point. So now we have the starting point for our line trace. So what will be the end point? The end point will be simple again. From the arrow, we need to get forward vector. Just get it over here. And then we need to add the distance on this forward vector, how far the weapon can actually reach. So for that, what I do is I multiply, and I multiply it by single precision float, and this will be the distance now. I usually make it like 1000, or what you can do is make it a variable and call it distance range over here. So that way this distance range can be different for different weapon. Then now we need to add the world location with the distance for the endpoint. Just add it. And now this will be the end for the line trace. So that's it. Bring this line trace over here. So we are going to connect it to false for now because this is not automatic at the moment. So now let's try to see if this one actually works. So for that, we need to go to the character. And before doing anything, we need to actually make our input for that one. So I have a folder called input already. So what you can do is right click on your input and make a input action. I have it already called IASuit. double click on it, and on the value type, change it to Boolean. And then I assume you already know about IMC as well, and you might have it already in your project. So open your IMC and just add it called IA suit. My suit button is left mouse button. And then on that one, add two triggers. One is called pressed, another one is called released, because when we press, we want the weapon to shoot. When we release, we want it to stop shooting. We want it to stop fire. So that's all you need to do for now. So once you are done, come to the character blueprint and search for IA shoot. So let's make a function to actually make our weapon fire. So add a function called useWeapon. Over here, now we need to get this shoot function to our player character. How can we actually do it? It's pretty simple. You might have remembered we added this child actor called weapon. So just drag it out. And then since this is a child actor, we can't directly cast to our rifle or to our weapon master. First, we need to get child actor. Now we have the child actor. Then what you can do now is now we can cast it to our weapon master. So I'm gonna promote it to a variable called weapon master. And then now we need to check when we are pressing the input button and when we release the input button. So for that, just get a branch. And this condition will be this action value over here, because this action value gives true or false when we press and release. So I'm just going to drag it to the input of this function, and I'm going to make it as pressed with a question mark. So if the player has pressed it, so what do we want to do? We want it to shoot. There we go. So on the IA shoot, drag this weapon function and connect the action value. Now let's have a look if this one is actually working. When I play the game and fire, you can see the trace coming out of my gun, which means this is working. So now let's make it automatic, because this is a rifle. This is not a pistol, just single fire. So for that, what we can do is now let's add this boolean called is automatic. And if this is not automatic, it's just going to fire once, like we just did. So to make it automatic, we need to use a node called SetTimerByFunctionName. So what this node does is it runs the function over and over again when you click on loop at this time rate. So we can make this time something called fire rate, and on the function name, we can use this line trace suit. I'm just going to copy this one and I'm going to paste it. So now onto the rifle, in this fire rate, I'm going to make it, let's say 0.1. So what's going to happen now is every 0.1 second, it's going to run this line trace suit. So if I'm clicking, so if I'm pressing the suit button, so every 0.1 second, it's going to run this line trace suit. But for that, I need to click on something called looping over here. So it loops over and over again until I press release. So also in the initial start delay, I always like to put a value of 0.1, because when we click for the first time, it ignores this 0.1 fire rate. It just shoots instantly. So now onto the rifle, if we make it automatic true, that means if this is true, this is going to run, right? So let's see. So when we press, it's going to fire on a loop, but we cannot stop it right now because we haven't made a function for that. So on our player character, use weapon, when we press and it's true, it's going to shoot. But when we release, we don't have anything to stop shooting right now. So for that, we need to make another custom event. Custom event, I'm going to call it stop shoot. And for that, we need to add a node called ClearTimerByFunctionName. That's it. And we need to clear this line trace suit again. Just paste it over here. So that means on our player character, on the false, that means when the character releases the shoot button, we need to clear our shoot. Sorry, not clear. We have called it stop shoot. So let's play it. So when I press, it's going to shoot. When I release the button, it's going to stop. So now we have successfully made a automatic rifle that is actually shooting and stopping when we release the button. So now how to make it feel good, as I said it before. For that, I'm going to give you 6 steps to make it actually feel good. So number 1, animation. When we fire the gun right now, we don't have any animation. We don't have our character animation playing at all. The hand is just straight, and this does not feel good. So let's add the animation to our weapon hands. So for that, in the weapon master, we need to get our player character. So how can we get it? So onto the begin play, just search for get player character and cast it to our player character. Then I'm gonna name it player character. So for those 6 steps, I would like to make a function, and I'm going to call it play effects. The first one is playing the animation. So how can we actually play the animation for the character hands? So what we need to do is onto our character animation blueprint, into the anim graph, we need to add something called default slot. So what this node does is it let us play montage. So instead of directly playing the animation, we can override that by playing a montage. So for the things like reload, changing weapon, montage is much better than changing the whole animation, and it's much more optimized as well. So just add this default slot between your output pose and state machine. So now into our, where was I? In the weapon master, get this player character. Now we need to get our skeletal mesh called FPS hand. And you might ask, why the skeletal mesh? Because only skeletal mesh can play the animation. And we are going to play the animation of the hands. So we need to get the hands, right? Simple. And then search for get anim instance and search for play montage or montage play. That's it. So this is step 1. And from the montage to play, I'm going to promote it to variable. And you might ask, why variable? Why can't we just play the montage over here? Because if I make a variable on every child blueprint, I can add a different montage over here. So for a rifle, I have different montage. For pistol, I have different montage. So that's why I always make variable. Same with the distance range as well. So now once it's done, we need to actually make a montage. So for that, on my animation pack, I have this animation called fire. There we go. This is the animation. So I'm going to make a montage out of this animation. So how do I do that? So right click on the animation, click on create, and click on create any montage. Well, I have already made a montage, so that's why I'm not going to do it again. So after that, just come to the rifle and search for a character montage animation that I just made it. So now I've got this montage, but I haven't actually added it. So way to add this function, I need to add it after my line trace. So play effects. So every time I shoot, this function is going to run as well. That means every 0.1 second, it's going to play this animation montage. And this is how it's going to look like. See how the hands are animating now with the gun? So that is what we wanted. So step 1 is done. Now step 2, play sound. So way to play the sounds on the same function, add something called play sound 2D. And I have a sounds already. You can get this sound anywhere you want. Like on the Google Chrome, you can just find a sound that you like. I'm not going to show you how to get a free sounds. It's pretty simple. So just go to the Google Chrome and search for some rifle sound effects and you will get plenty of them. And just add it over here. So now, let's see the difference. So now every time you shoot, it's going to play the sound. Now comes the step 3, muzzle flash. So we need to play the muzzle flash every time we fire. So how to do that? Same thing, on the same folder, we need to add a node called spawn our system. So here is the thing. If you have a Niagara system, you need to search for spawn system at location. Or if you have the old Cascade particle system, you need to add something called spawn emitter attached, because it needs to attach to our weapon mesh over here. And then from here, rather than adding it over here, it's better to create a variable. And I'm going to call it muzzle flash. And I'm going to change the scale to 0.5 because it was too big. I'm going to add around 60. I know this value because I've checked it already before making the video. So it should be this one, PS LPAMG muzzle flash, that I got it from this weapon pack. But you can find any muzzle flash. It will be pretty much free. Just add it over there. So onto the rifle, I've added it. And now let's have a look. So it's playing sideways, so we need to rotate it. So if we go to our weapon master and rotate it to 90° on Z axis, there we go. The muzzle flash is now actually playing. Now the next step. We need to spawn our decal. Let's say a gun impact decal. When I hit to this wall, there is nothing. I'm going to disable this line trace. So on the draw debug type, I'm going to make it none. And then when I actually shoot it over here, you can see nothing actually happening. I don't know if the gun is actually being fired. So now we need to actually add the decals on the impact point, like the gun impact. So how do we do that? So for that, I've got this texture over here called gun impact decal. So just go to your Chrome and search for gun impact PNG. And then I got this from PNG egg website and just download it and import it over here as a texture. And then to create a material for that, because to add a decal, we need to make a materials out of it. So just come over here and search for materials, and I'm gonna call it M gun impact. Open it and then get that texture over here. Now we need to change this from surface to deferred decal and change it from opaque to translucent. And then this RGB goes to the base color. And then this A goes to this opacity override. And that's it. That's all we need to do for now. So we need to add it as an decal. So how to do that? Onto this play effect function again. Come here and add something called spawn decal at location. And then this decal will be a variable as well called gun impact. And for the location and rotation, we need to add it from the line trace suite. We need to know where does the line trace hit. And over there, we need to add it. I'm going to show it to you later on. But before that, onto the decal size, I'm going to search for something called random float in range. And I'm going to add it to the decal size. And then I'm going to make it something like 12 to 18, just so it's a bit random, the size. And then for the location and rotation, I'm going to pass it as an input value. And then for the lifespan, I'm going to make it something like 8 seconds. So come to the rifle, compile it, and on the class default, add that decal called M underscore gun impact. There we go. So now we need to actually feed in the impact location and the rotation. For that, what we need to do is we need to break this out hit. So just search for break hit result. And then over here, we have this something called impact point. Just connect it to impact location. And then on the rotation, we've got this something called normal. Just drag it to the rotation, and this should be all. So now, if I fire the gun now, as you can see over here, we actually have the decal. It's working fine. Now, we need to add one more thing, and that is a dot effect or the dust or smoke effect on the impact location. Like when you actually fire, there should be some kind of dirt coming out of the impact location like that decal. So let's do that. So for that, we need to make a Niagara system, and then on your weapon folder, right click on it and create a Niagara system, and search for something called simple sprite burst. Just click on it and click on create. I have made it already, so I'm not gonna create it again, but I'm gonna show you what to do once you create it. So once you have the Niagara system, just name it something like NS Gun Impact. Just open it, and then the first thing, on this emitter state, On the loop behavior, make it once and change the loop duration to 0. Then on the spawn burst instantaneous, change it to something like 50. Then come down to initialized particle, and on the lifetime mode, change it to random, and the lifetime minimum to 0.4 and maximum to 0.8. And onto the color mode, you can just make a direct set and then make it something like 0.3, just a bit dark gray. Just you can copy the value over here. Then on the sprite size, make it random again, and the minimum change it to 8 and maximum to 18. And that's it. And then you need to add something called add velocity on the particle spawn. Just add it and change the velocity mode to in cone, velocity speed to something like 100, and then cone angle to something like 60. That's it. Now on the particle update, you need to add something called scale sprite size. So just search for scale sprite size and just add it. On the point 0, make it 1, and then on the point 1, make the value 2.5. Then add something called scale color, and then on the scale alpha, just click on this drop down and search for plot from curve. Just click on it. Then add something called drag. Just click and drag and change the value to 3 each. Then you need to add another thing called gravity force, and this will be something like minus 980. Just change it to like 100, 120, similar to this value. You need to add one more thing called scale color, and over here just search for scale color and just add it. It will come as scale color 001 and it's fine. And then point 0, make the value 1, and then on point 1, make it 0. That's all you need to do over here. Now one last thing, on this sprite renderer, change your default material to something called m_smoke. This will be provided by Unreal Engine default, so you don't need to make it at all. After that, you can see your Niagara over here. Then come to the weapon master, onto the effects. You need to add spawn system at location. So spawn system at location, just add it, and then again promote it to variable, call it dust impact location, and then onto the location, it's the same location as before, the impact location, and then the rotation is same as before. So that should be pretty much is. So now let's have a look. So when you fire, okay, it's not working because we haven't actually added it over here. Just search for NS gun impact and just add it on your rifle. And now when you actually fire, you can see the dust coming out. It's working fine. So now we need to add another thing called camera shake. So whenever you fire, your camera need to shake a bit to give a realistic effect. So how do you do that? So I made it already, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So right click on your weapon folder and on the blueprint class, search for camera shake. And click on this default camera shake base and just make it. Then name it something like CS firing. And then on the location, make it 1, 1, which should be default. And on the X amplitude, just copy the value 0.5, 15, Y 0.5, 12. On Z, make it nothing. On the rotation, change it to 1 and 1. On pitch, make it 0.3 and 10. On yaw, make it 0.1 and 8. And on the roll, just nothing. So after that comes this duration time. Change the duration time to 0.3, blend in time to 0.01, and blend out time to 0.25, or maybe let's say 1.5. Now we need to actually add this to our weapon. So how do we do that? Come to the weapon master, and then we need to search for something called get player camera manager, and then search for start camera sec. And then onto the rifle, add it over here. So now whenever you fire, your screen is gonna shake a bit. There you go. And now the last step. We need to add a little bit of recoil on our gun. So as of now, if I fire on the wall, it's hitting at the exact same spot. So how do I change that? I have a simple fix for that. On your weapon master, if you come to the line trace suit, from the get forward vector, you should have a node called random unit vector in cone in radian. Just search for that one. And then on the cone half angle, promote it to variable and call it recoil value. Now come to the rifle, 0.05, and you can see the difference now. So that's it. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys learned something from it. And if you do, leave a like, subscribe my channel, and stay tuned. Thank you.